Hello and welcome to the show. If you're enjoying it and want an ad-free experience, consider signing up for the Patreon, patreon.com/the101podcast. Get early access and exclusive content on there as well for less than the cost of a cup of coffee. Links to ways of supporting the show are in the description. Thank you so much for listening and enjoy this episode. You laughing already, bro? Come on, dude. I messed up my intro, bro. Messing up the vibe. Welcome back to another episode of the One-on-One Podcast. And today we have a scholar with us. We have a very well-read individual. Not a first-timer on the One-on-One Podcast. And some of you may know his brother. His brother is a local celebrity. And these two gentlemen, there's something else. Today we're joined by Professor Longo. What's up, dude?
What's going on, man? How you doing?
Doing all right. Before we get into it, let me plug some stuff that I forgot to plug yet. Make sure to get the Occultist Monday on my website, the101podcast.com. Make sure to get the Chosen Juan versus the Saturnian Cube comic book for $3.33 on my website, the101podcast.com. And also make sure to sign up for the Kickstarter for issue 2 that's coming out very soon. We're in the final stages as of this recording, and we will be plugging that on the social media. It'll be in the description, so make sure to sign up for the Kickstarter to support the show. Patreon.com/the101podcast. Exclusive content of our 100 exclusive episodes only found on there. And we're dropping some fire on there. We're dropping some bombs with Donut and the guys. So it's good, all good in the hood. And take it away, Professor Longo. What do you want to tell the people about yourself, dude? What?
Oh man, I don't know. It's tough. I can be difficult to categorize, I guess. I don't really have any kind of spiel or agenda or anything like that. But I own a bookstore and run a bookstore with my older brother. I sort of consider myself an investor first and foremost. Like in the stock market, cryptocurrencies, things like that. Been doing it for a long time, which is how I got the bookstore. The bookstore is itself a sort of investment. That's about it, I guess.
What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts on having to compete with the likes of Amazon? And how do you feel about him starting off selling books first, and then from that to launching phalluses into outer space and trying to conquer the universe?
That's funny. Oh, sorry. Someone
You're good.
Walked in. Hi. No, we're not open.
You're not open.
No, I'm sorry.
Okay, that's all right.
You got people trying to come in the store while doing a podcast. It's all good, though. This is real life, people. This is unedited, raw, because I don't edit a lot of stuff out. I've edited a couple stuff out. I haven't posted some episodes, but
side door unlocked.
it's all good. All right, here we are. 3.
Anyways.
All right, so back to the question. I'm writing down some timestamps here.
Up there.
So we have Jeff Bezos that was doing, first he started off with books.
Right.
And there's this theory that I have, that people of antiquity, all the most powerful lizard people had the biggest libraries. So I think that the way that Jeff Bezos was able to become this wizard alchemist, right? Because money, any exchange of energy, exchange of money. I mean, we might talk about the stock market and crypto today.
Sure.
Any exchange of that, it's linked back to alchemy. It's a transference. It's a transmutation of energy. What are your thoughts on him starting off as this bookseller, Amazon, and then transitioning to trying to push the New World Order or something?
Yeah, no, he definitely went from sort of humble beginnings, just slinging books, trying to make a buck or whatever, and into like full on world domination. So it's an interesting story. I mean, I don't know. It definitely, it seems like at some point, I don't know where in his timeline, but it seems like he was corrupted at some point, because what he was doing in the beginning was pretty genuinely good service by all means. I don't think anyone could really argue that. He's sourcing from local bookstores and things like that, just find you whatever book you needed. They weren't available online in that fashion, and then he just went on and on and on, just compounding this huge machine. And at some point in there, I don't know if it's when he went into other services or whatever it was, but he just became this disgusting thing, this hairless creature, kind of like Rockefeller was.
A homunculus. It's okay to say homunculus.
He was a homunculus. He's a full size, and Rockefeller, same thing, was hairless and this sort of creature. I sure hope that my bookstore doesn't turn into Amazon. I honestly don't see us in competition with Amazon. We can't compete with Amazon. It's impossible, like in terms of pricing. But we can, which is sort of the new thing in small business, it's called experiential retail. So it's all about the experience. It's not about having the best price. It's about giving people a environment, an aesthetic, some sort of experience that they're looking for. And the products are somewhat secondary. I wouldn't say they're entirely secondary. And then, we just have our niche. So we have things that are out of print, cult stuff, esoteric stuff, first editions, things you just don't normally find, that aren't available on Amazon at all, because they primarily do new books. So that's how we kind of get by with it. But, and then even on their books, they are evil. Because on their books, they will lose money. And on many of their products, they're losing money. Like, they will send you something just so you're happy. They don't care if they lose like a few dollars on it. Because most of the money they make is off their cloud services and their software that they sell to like big companies and things like that. That's where most of the cash comes from. And then the products are just to get you hooked.
You are the product when it comes to companies like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. They just want to get you stuff in return for your data and your spending habits and your address and your email, phone number, all that. Get you on the subscription to, what you're watching on TV. I mean, they have everything now. They sell stuff. It's pretty scary. Like, there's one book that's Quentin Tarantino just wrote a book on like cinema and all that. And
what? That dude's a wizard.
Yeah, he's a wizard for sure. And his book.
What's the name of it?
Oh, God, I think it's called On Cinema. It's like a big orange book. I have it in the store here, but I can tell you, just being straightforward, at wholesale, it's a nice hardcover, so it's like a, I don't know, $30 book, $35 book or something. It's not cheap, and at wholesale, from the publisher, it costs $21. And when I looked it up on Amazon, they were selling it. It was on sale but they had it for $21 with free overnight shipping. So they're literally giving it to the end customer at the same price that it costs a bookstore to buy it, wholesale, and they're giving you free overnight shipping. And like the wholesalers we're getting it from aren't even giving us that, you know what I mean? So they're losing on the book, they're losing money, but they just want to get you the book. They don't care, you know?
So we have this book here by, because I call them cinemagicians, and I mean, who else than Quentin Tarantino? And I've watched a lot of his movies, but Cinema Speculation, 2022 nonfiction book by American filmmaker, published by Harper on November 1st. It just came out.
Yeah, it just came out. Yeah.
Film criticism and film theory, a feat of reporting and wonderful personal history. The book is a collection of essays organized around key American films from the 1970s, which Tarantino saw in his youth. It was inspired by the film writing of critic Pauline Kate. So interesting.
Yeah.
And I was listening to the audiobook. I usually don't listen to audiobooks because I don't feel like I tune in
remember like any of it.
Yes. Yeah, because
that's what I find too.
Well, it's what you're talking about, right? The experience of being there, of looking, of smelling the air. That's all being stripped away. And I think there's something much deeper going on when it comes to these. Look at the movie Idiocracy, I think it's the name of it, where it's the Costco is taking over. Well, if you look, that's eerily similar to Amazon, where they're building Amazons in the middle of these ghettos. And I think that so I was reading The Glass Bead Game or listening to it. And he said that fiction, at the very beginning, he said fiction is, I think, another dimension of reality or something, or of this world.
Right.
And I think of it like that when I'm reading a fictional book or I'm watching a movie. So we're talking about cinema. I think about all these things. I think about how art imitates life, right?
Yeah.
And this is art. And I think art is magic.
Yeah. No, there's no doubt about that. The writer Jorge Luis Borges, fascinating guy. He's Argentinian. He's kind of like their literary hero down there. And he was an interesting guy in how he viewed fiction, because he famously said that fiction is more true than nonfiction. And his philosophy behind that was that he believed what we're seeing as reality in the world is illusory. So it's an illusion of some kind. And therefore, anything like facts, physics and science and all of these things, which are perpetuating and describing that illusion, are lies. And fiction, which operates outside of the limits of the illusion, like space and time and so on.
Whoa, I love that.
And physics, because fiction doesn't operate under any of those constraints, is actually more true than the things which are perpetuating the illusion, like nonfiction. And that was his view. So it's sort of a transcendental type thing.
Yeah, I never really understood it like that. And you're talking about the author of The Glass Bead Game?
I don't know.
I forget his name.
I don't know who wrote that, but I'm talking about Jorge Luis Borges. His last name is Borges. You would like him, though. He writes short stories. Mostly, a lot of them are Kabbalistic. They deal with labyrinths a lot.
Oh, okay. I see him here.
He's sort of obsessed with labyrinths and the mystical and the dream world and things like that. So
I never heard
that
of
was
this
his
guy.
take, though. Yeah, he's really good. Just check him out.
Which book is he most famous for? Is it Fictions, 1944?
Yeah, that's his most famous.
Oh, did he write The Library of Babel? Is this the guy that wrote that?
He did.
book?
Yeah. He wrote The Library of Babel.
Yes. I know exactly who this guy is. I've ran into him before because of that story of the Library of Babel is really interesting.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, he has a lot of very like paradoxical, sort of, I don't know, like mind bending stories, you know, things that are very ironic and things like that. Yeah, that was his take, was that fiction is more true than nonfiction because it didn't operate under the constraints of the illusion of reality. I mean, I think you like to call it the Matrix or whatever, but something like that. Fiction operates outside of all of that. It's transcendental. It's closer to some kind of source.
I call it that because I think that's what people relate to the most. If I think everybody's at one point heard of the Matrix or Dark City, and these cerebral movies where I think that it goes back to Joseph Campbell and the hero, the hero's journey, where that talks to us on so many levels, and it talks to us because I think it goes back to our ancestral roots. And I think that information I've talked about on the show before is passed down genetically. Fears are passed down genetically. Right. Anything is really it's stored in I think that the Akashic records is our DNA. All these things that we hear about are our DNA, and people are able to somehow tap into that. Like you have a Manly P. Hall type of guy that
unbelievable. Yeah,
that they're able to construct these crazy mind palaces, and the way that they're able to weave in and out of them is amazing. And that's what really makes me want to up my game whenever I'm like learning about something. And what would you say about, because last time we were at the store, we were talking about the phenomenology, right? Where it's what's true to you, that experience is real to you. And that could be for anything in life. It could be a Bigfoot encounter, it could be a UFO encounter, it could be whatever. As long as it happened to you, it's real to you, right?
Yeah. And the paradigm that we live in now is very much backwards, because we're sort of taught rationally to think that whatever is objective and can be stripped from our shared realities is what's true, when in reality those are very abstract, sort of abstract concepts. It's very, very much mental and conceptual, whereas your experience is intuitive. So it's firsthand, and one of the, a lot of it, I think we talked about this last time too, with Rene Descartes and dualism, where that all stems from. That's sort of where our whole world starts forking, into like this super scientific, super rational, skeptical mindset. But the interesting thing about this, about the Cartesian philosophy, is there seems to be a hole in it, because his whole thing is cogito ergo sum, I think therefore I am, which is the cornerstone of his worldview. He was searching for some kind of solid bedrock cornerstone of which to build the rest of his phenomenology from. And he thought that the only thing that you can prove, or that you can't disprove, was yourself, the fact that you're thinking, but the thing that's interesting about that is that's not objective, right? Because you can't prove that I'm thinking, you know what I mean? Yeah. So the cornerstone itself is intuitive.
We're part of each other's unreality. So I can't prove that you're a thinking thing. And I've talked about this before, because I love Cartesian philosophy. Yeah. And the idea of the Boltzmann's brain, like these thought experiments of what if you are, and a lot of people don't like that idea of dehumanizing somebody, because if you call somebody an NPC or a construct of some sorts, it starts, I could see where it could be dehumanizing, but it is a, I don't know how to put it, but again, it's a philosophical dilemma that we're facing, because essentially you can't prove, the only thing that you can prove is that you're a thinking thing, and your senses can't even be trusted.
Yeah.
So
And one of the definitions of mysticism is an emphasis on experience. An emphasis. Mysticism would be defined by me as a system which has an end goal of experience of the divine, basically of union with God, direct experience. That's a mystical system, and I think that's why a lot of people are seeking out these systems, whether it's through a society or individual practices, because there's not an emphasis on experience anymore.
yeah, there's not, and that's why
Yeah.
that's how we get Amazon, we get all
Yeah.
these where it's just a click of a button. And
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a push towards this transhumanist agenda or this Black Mirror-esque world where everything is just you consume, 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 consume. We're faced with Black Friday, and then right after that you have Cyber Monday, and you have all these things.
Oh wait, you forgot about a Small Business Saturday.
Well, that's overlooked. You know what I'm saying? They want to eliminate those people because they're like, hey,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
and in direct experience too is so important. I mean, one, because it teaches you to sort of think for yourself and be independent, which they definitely don't want. But then two is that in direct experience, there is an actual true and false. You see, because you either experienced it or you didn't, right? It was either hot or it wasn't. You either saw it or you didn't. Like you said, whether it's a cryptid, UFO, or it's just your everyday life, there is a actual true or false. There's not like this big long scale of opinion, which is what they want. They want everything to be up conjecture, up for debate. Maybe it was this, and it's like, if your emphasis is on experience, you sort of, set yourself up for success, really, because you have, parameters that you're working within. Something's true or it's not. And which is weird because people think that experience is so subjective. It's so speculative, which is the complete opposite. So it's very much paradoxical.
Yeah, and we're in a world right now that for example, the identity politics, where how you're saying they want to make everything up for interpretation. Well, where do you draw the line? If you can't come to an agreement on whatever XYZ is because it's up for interpretation, or you feel this way one day and you feel another way the next day, well, where does it stop? Where do you draw the line?
Exactly. They don't want lines. They just want, some big long spectrum of conjecture, no true or false. Everyone's just spinning in circles. They don't know what to think. So that's what I think. If you're relying on your own experience, you you intuitively know. Like Descartes, I think therefore am. You just you don't have to explain it. But it's tricky that they definitely want the emphasis on objectivity, science, rationalism, and sort of group thought, like you said, and post-structuralism, which is everything's a social construct and all of that.
What's the saying? Order out of chaos. What's the ordo ab cow? Is that how you say it?
I have no idea.
So order, I think it relates to this idea of order out of chaos, and it says order exists within chaos as chaos exists within order. You can create order through a never-ending struggle to find balance with chaos. You cannot completely remove chaos from your life, so don't waste time trying. Rather, aim for the middle path of balance between order and chaos. Sure.
That's interesting. Yeah, they have Jordan Peterson. His book is 12 Rules for Life, and the subtitle is An Antidote to Chaos. But what's interesting, and it's a white book, the interesting thing is his second book.
What does that mean, a white book?
Oh, it's literally white colored.
Oh, like the whole thing.
And the second one's black.
Oh.
It's called Beyond Order. And so he's talking about what you're talking about. that you can't just have one, right? He couldn't just write the antidote to chaos, which is that typical, clean your room type spiel that he has, without dealing with order, because both can be good and bad. You have to be able to live with both, because there are people who deal with too much chaos in their life. They're unorganized. They have no idea where they're going. They have no direction. Their room is just clothes all over the floor. Their whole life's a mess. But then on the flip side, in an equally bad position, are people who have too much order in their life. They're OCD. They're crazy. There's people who, have to check the stove 20 times to make sure they turned it off, and wash their hands 30 times a day. And it's like they're both in a sort of hell. So neither one is better, I would think. You definitely have to straddle both, which is music. Music is a dramatized version of that story. It has a lot of order to it. It can be mathematical even and notated, but it's also very chaotic. It's sort of, especially when there's, solo or something like that, someone's improvising, they're straddling that line. They're walking a tightrope between order and chaos. And that's probably why it appeals to us so much.
That's what I like about podcasting, because right now this is unscripted. We're going with the flow, seeing where the conversation goes, and it could literally go anywhere. Right.
Yeah.
So, and back to this order out of chaos thing, was like, they say that walking is what, a controlled fall. I think that's like the actual definition of walking. So I don't know, man. I think that I'm the type of person, I need structure, and it depends on what. So I do, although my background looks cluttered, all my stuff is very organized. And that's one of the things my wife really gets on my case about, because I am so OCD. If I line something up, it needs to be lined up with the edge of whatever it is, so it's straight.
Right. And that, I think in our society that we place a great emphasis on order. We admire people who are organized and, like you said, things are straightened up. But what people don't realize is, and not that there's anything wrong with it, is that can stunt you as well. So it can make you not be creative, not be artistic, because you're sort of overthinking, you can't free yourself up, you can't make mistakes, that sort of thing. So order and chaos are both good and bad. It's totally the yin and yang thing.
Yeah, dude, I never thought about it like that, because if you confine yourself to one box, if you confine yourself to that cube, then you're right. That's the whole saying, think outside the box. And if you don't push yourself to be uncomfortable, like for example, myself and doing live shows, well, if I never do the live shows, I'm not going to step out of my comfort zone to be able to do it. So,
and for someone who, considers himself sort of OCD, doing something live is probably a big task for you, whereas other people who are super laid back, it's easy for them, but doing things that are structured is much more difficult. So I think it's a constant struggle for everyone. It's sort of straddling that line, between like a organizer and artist.
To me, it's an anxiety thing, but the problem is that it doesn't matter if people are watching and reacting real time, because people are still going to listen to it anyways after the fact. Even more people after the fact are going to listen to it, and they could still react either on YouTube or Rockfin, or send me a message on Instagram and tell me I'm a fucking idiot or whatever whatever the
did people do that?
No, not I haven't gotten anything like that.
Wow, that's crazy.
Except they roast me on Old World Florida's page though. They roast me on there. Yeah. Somebody said I need to eat a Snickers, so I don't know what that means, but it's the I don't care what people think. I mean, it's not nothing like that, but it's just to be 100%, bro, I'm not a very social person. I'm very I'm the typical hermit. I'm very introverted, and it's weird because my son is like super extroverted, wants to say hi to everybody, and having kids, dude, forces you to interact with people.
Yeah, so, you have to be social and all that.
You have to go to the birthday parties and all this stuff, and it's like, oh, I got to interact with people. But usually the parents are cool. right? So, and what happens is when you go to these birthday parties from the school, it's usually the same kids, so you meet the same parents at those parties, so you'll catch up on the next one, right?
Yeah, you feel better each time, I'm sure, you know.
Yeah, but that's me. I've never been a big social person. You know, I'm not gonna strike up a conversation with somebody random. I hate small talk, dude. It's like
I don't know if I'm introverted or extroverted, but I'm a notorious politician. So I'm sort of known by my brother, my girlfriend, and my friends as being sort of like a fence sitter. I never have issues with people. Like I'm never in arguments.
You're a pushover, bro?
Not a pushover. I just sort of like politically manage the situation to where I'm like not into it with anyone. I can like mediate between two friends and things like that. So that's sort of my role.
Are you a Taurus, dude?
No, I'm a Pisces. But I just get along with everyone I don't know why.
Yeah. I don't know what a Pisces is. I mean, Dr.
Pisces
Narco Longo would know.
Yeah, that's like February 21st-ish, depending on the year, to March 21st. And it's the last sign of the zodiac. It's a water sign. It is the two fish is the symbol for it. It's ruled by Jupiter and has a co-rulership with Neptune. So it's very watery, very dreamy, mystical. Manly P. Hall is Pisces. Rudolf Steiner was a Pisces.
Oh, nice.
So people think Jesus is more or less Piscean. You know, whether or not he was a Pisces, like by birth, is sort of irrelevant. But you know, like his whole energy, the Piscean age, and all of that. So it's an interesting sign. They're sort of known for being emotional, you know, softies, super emotional, daydreamers, big time. I'm a daydreamer. I'm like in the clouds like 9 out of 10 times. I'm walking around I think a lot, basically.
You ever done astral projection or anything, bro?
No, I haven't actually. I've never experimented with it. And the thing is, things like that are sort of not grounding are probably not what I need, because I'm already not grounded, you know what I mean? So a lot of like recreational drugs and things like that that I've experimented with that sort of take you into those type of states, they've been fine. You know, I've never had any issues, but there's been some of them where I'm like, okay, I probably don't need this because I'm already floating around in the world. So yeah, haven't tried astral projection though. I'm sure it's fun.
For the longest time, I haven't had it in a while, but for the longest time, I was having a lot of sleep paralysis.
Really?
For a long time. I've had it since I was a kid. And
yeah, usually you do. I've talked to a few people who've had it, and they all had it when they were children.
And I mean, it was happening as of probably like a year ago, I want to say, and it hasn't happened in a long time. But I would have I had gotten it so many times that I was able to snap out of it quickly. I was able to snap myself out of it, and I would never see anything. I never saw anything except for one time, the day before going to Coral Castle, where I thought I saw what looked like, I promise you, like a small alien gray. Like I promise you, it was the day before. It was like 3 a.m. Wow. But you know when you're sleeping in your room and things they morph into things, right? You know what I'm saying? Like the darkness, that shadow, that coat that you put on that chair looks like somebody's there.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Right.
So I had just finished going to sleep, and I woke up and I was in an episode of sleep paralysis, and I don't see the shadow people. I don't see I feel a sense of dread, like something's watching me, but I've never seen anything except for this one time, and it was the fan right by the bed. And as soon as I opened my eyes, I couldn't move, and as soon as I opened my eyes, I looked, and it looked like this small alien gray, and then as soon as I snapped out of it, it just disappeared, and I was like, oh, that was crazy. But again, there's something about me being in
People keep trying. Sorry to cut you off. People keep trying to open the door. It's so annoying.
You're good, dude. There's something about me being. This was in South Florida, Miami,
Yeah.
There's something, I think it's the 29th parallel or one of those parallels. There's something about me being near that parallel that just, dude, it makes me feel like it drains my energy. I feel so weird. It like repels me. I hate being there. It depresses me. Like, I don't know.
How south do you mean? So
Homestead.
if you're in Palm Beach?
Homestead.
Yeah, you mean like all the way down?
Yeah.
I understand.
I don't know what it is about it, dude, but I just cannot stand being there. And that's where Coral Castle is. And you have that whole lore of that, how he built that. But it's something about being next to that parallel that just throws me off. And it always has. And your brother posted this thing on his Instagram the other day about a UFO. Well, I saw I chalked it up to it being a bird. I was like, oh, look, something just dove behind the trees over there. That I was a bird. And then your brother posted that picture of some UFOs in Homestead. I was in Homestead when I saw it. It was the weekend I had told your brother I was going down, and I walked out of my wife's friend's house, and I looked at the horizon, and boom, dude, I saw it just clear as day, just like, and I was like, wow, that looked like a ball. It looked like a ball, but I was like, it was probably a bird or something else. We're next to a military base, so who knows?
Well, do you know about Crestview Elementary?
No, here in Florida?
Yeah, so it's actually in Opelika.
Oh,
I know we've talked about before. But I won't get into all that history. But Crestview I believe it was in the 1970s. It's one of the most compelling UFO sightings in history. Basically what happened was these kids were out to recess, and they got called back in, and whether it's dramatized or not, I don't know. But one of the last kids coming in, and the teacher that was calling them in, looked up and saw a humongous craft in the sky hanging over the school. And they freaked out. But the teacher was like, oh, it's kind of like what you said. Oh, there's a base nearby, whatever, go back to class. And the next day at the same time during recess, I believe it was 3 crafts came down and put on like a full-on air show, like tricks. They're like coming by like right over the trees. I mean, this is like right over the school. And like the articles you're pulling up, the whole school saw it. I mean, we're talking people that are still alive, first of all. Kids that are, 5 years old all the way up to like middle school age. When you're 12 or 13 years old, you know what you're seeing. You're not that young. And the staff, the teachers saw it as well. And everyone had the same account. So then I was sort of in that same area, Miami-Dade. So there's no shortage of UFOs in Homestead and Miami, and where you experienced one.
Well, that and when you go to Coral Castle, he's got that little alien face in the stone right next to the seat, whatever.
He looks like an alien, and he straight up, dude.
A homunculus, like 5 foot, 4'10" or something. So you said that isn't Florida ruled by Pisces as well, the fish?
Yeah.
And
it is.
I've heard that. So the zodiac is a pathway for like the soul, right? And they say that it enters through the first sign, which again, I don't know astrology. That's why I talked to your brother. But it goes in through the first sign and exits out of the last sign, which is Pisces. And I've heard people say that Florida is best for manifestation. I've heard that. And I've also heard that people believe that people in Florida are in another dimension.
That's hilarious. Well, they're also, like you said, it's the path of the soul, to death. And this is where people go to die. They come to Florida, they retire, and they die here. And it is ruled by the last sign. So they're sort of on their way out, like you said.
And you said it has a co-house with Jupiter. We have Jupiter, Florida. So hear me out, dude. So I have this thing that I've been
Neptune. So it's Jupiter and Neptune rule Pisces, and we have a Neptune beach also.
I have this theory that I've been working on because I think it goes back to the Chariot card with Crowley. It's the Full Metal Alchemist that they're transmuting reality in real time. Well, check it out. So I think that the locomotive is associated with alchemy, because if you think about the locomotive, what's happening, and look at the robber barons that founded Florida. You have Henry Flagler, Henry Plant. Well, if you understand the locomotive, it's an alchemical process that's happening within the locomotive, exchange of energy. So taking the coal and burning it to create other energy to have this full metal thing going. And if you read the story of Daedalus and you understand that the whole connection with Almada and all this stuff and the automata and how they enchant these pieces of metal, these suits of armor in order to warp people's perceptions.
They're talismanic.
Yes. So I think that if you look at Florida, you can think of it as an alchemical flask, because what happens? People come in and they are processed. They go through an alchemical exchange and they are processed to that next level of existence, which is death. And I have a buddy of mine who he does this thing called Tarot Tories, and Florida, he associates it with the death card.
Yeah.
Coincidental.
Scorpio. Yeah. That's interesting. I could see that. And what's funny is to sort of connect the two things. We have the cities, so you have Jupiter, and which is funny because right under Jupiter, you have Juno Beach. And then right above Jupiter, you have Hobe Sound, and Hobe is also Jupiter. And then in Florida, you have Venus, I believe, which exalts in Pisces. And then you have Neptune Beach. So it has all the cities that rule Pisces, all the planets that rule Pisces are cities in Florida. And then you could look this up in the early 1900s to connect all of this together. There was something called the Celestial Railroad. And it was like a tourist type thing that would hit all these cities named after planets. And they would take this, full metal alchemy steam engine and
chariot.
go around, chariot and ride around to all the celestial bodies.
Dude.
Isn't that crazy, dude?
Jupiter, Venus, Mars, Juno, Rhea, Lake Worth, Hope Sound.
Yeah, I'm in Lake Worth right now, so it's going right for me.
Dude, what?
Isn't that crazy? Yeah, that was their alchemical flask.
There's a Mars, Florida?
There used to be. There's not anymore, which is probably... And Mars rules the death card, too. So like your friend said.
Of course, Henry Flagler built a segment of his Florida East Coast Railway just west of the Celestial Railroad in 1894 to avoid the high shipping costs. By 1896, the Celestial Railroad was out of business. Huh. Yeah. Interesting.
I had a guy in here. This is going back a bit, but to the sleep process. I was just thinking, I didn't know you had that. I had a guy in here in the store, and we get all kinds of interesting critters coming in when you're dealing with this type of stuff. And this guy, he's a hermeticist, and he came in super knowledgeable. I mean, knowledgeable enough to where like he might even give talks in the store on it and stuff. And he came in and he told me that he had sleep paralysis too. And he said he's had it his whole life. And he told me all these scary stories. He does see stuff. He does hear things through his audio and visual hallucinations. And he said, his little kids banging on his door, sounds like someone throws a brick at the house and runs away. And then but this is his take, which was interesting. And I want to know what you think about this, because he said it actually seems like the state that you're in, that like half dream, half waking state, it seems like they don't want you in that state. It seems like whatever these things are, in your mind or outside of your mind, are doing whatever they can to wake you up. And I thought that was really interesting. He thought maybe there's something special about that borderline state, that they don't want you. You know what I'm trying to say? That they're actually they're mad that you're in it, and they're like, hey, like, wake up, get out of this. You don't belong here type thing. and he said he's been struggling with that idea. You know what I mean? Because it's almost like he doesn't want to wake up. He's like, what happens if I just stick in this?
Well, so the other day, and by the other day I mean like some months back, I had a waking dream. So I haven't had sleep paralysis for a while. And the other day I had a waking dream. So I remember sitting on the side of the bed and I sat down, collected my thoughts before getting up. And then I remember just getting back up again. It was like I got back up again. And I remember I was like, I literally just woke up. So I had a waking dream.
Wow.
And I think the problem with this whole astral projection thing, because I've talked to people about it, I've tried to do it. I did this technique, and I forgot. Your brother told me it was Freemasonic. It was...
What was the technique?
Yoga. He said it was like yoga-related, Freemasonic, whatever.
Yeah.
And the technique that I was doing was... It sounds really weird. I promise you it sounds really weird. But it's this technique to... Because when I smoke... I don't remember my dreams. And I was sober for a few months and I was finally I was able to remember. I was able to dream. I wasn't dreaming. And this technique, I forgot where I found it. I think I found it online somewhere. You have to lay down and you imagine, it's called the skull fuck method. It's really weird. And what you do is you imagine a blue ethereal phallus going up through your legs, right? And as it comes up through your body, you're laying there in the I promise you, bro, hear me out, because it works. It works.
I don't know where you learned this one, man.
Yeah, it works. I promise. You know how it is, dude. You're reading all these occult books and stuff like that. Oh, that sounds easy, so let me try it. So you're laying there, death man pose, right? You're laying on your back, and you imagine this phallus going up through your legs. And as it's coming up, it's a blue phallus. You imagine it lighting, illuminating your entire body as it comes up. And the phallus is going to insert itself into the base of your skull. So imagine it going into your skull, hence the skull fuck method. Sure. And you do that, right? You imagine it's a form of meditation, whatever. I just did it just because I thought it was funny.
Yeah.
And I shit you not, bro. If I could remember my dreams to the T, like to bro, it was the wildest thing. I could remember the dream from the very beginning to the very end. So what I think is going on, because I know people who have done astral projection, and I'll send you the Gateway Experience tapes of the Robert Monroe, where they tried to, it's hemispheric synchronization.
Yeah, I know the hemisync stuff.
Yeah.
Monroe Institute, yeah.
What I think is happening, because I've heard this before, dude. I've had occultists on the show that have told me about how there is an astral realm. There is this other dimension. Now, when you read the Picatrix and you read these all these occult books, right? These grimoires, they talk about how you're able to astral project, but you need to call forth a watcher to watch your body while you're out doing these activities. So there's a dangerous aspect to it. And what I think happens is I've had occultists tell me that they've seen political figures in the astral realm that are guarded by other like astral bodyguards. Like they are in there, and then they again, this is what somebody told me. They said they've seen dinosaurs in the astral realm, Bigfoot, aliens, all these type of things. And again, it's another exactly the boys. Yeah, they're hanging out in the astral realm. But the guy was dead serious, bro. The guy was like 100% serious about it, and I believe him because he's into the whole cult stuff. And he says that it's another realm. So I think the reason that they want you out is because it's, again, you can do things you wouldn't normally. It's the OG metaverse, bro. It's the OG metaverse where you're able to tap in and you're able to be like a Metatron, affect reality from the outside. Yeah. Boom, boom, boom. Go back into your body and you've affected whatever it was, XYZ. Yeah. So
the cheat code to magic, you know.
Pythagoras said that all is number, and what I think he meant by that is that it's a sort of binary code, and if it's a binary code, it's a sort of program that's being run as reality. And there's a thing called synesthesia, bro, where people see numbers. Yeah. So they see constructs. They see constructs.
There's already sacred geometry and all that.
Yes.
And there's definitely pattern to nature, and to man. It seems like. Do you have the complete Golden Dawn System of Magic by Israel Regardie?
I have one of his books. I started reading it. I know somebody who. So this is gonna sound weird too. So I'm in a.
So there's a red phallus this time.
What?
I was joking.
Oh no. So this is gonna sound weird. I've visited. I'm not. I guess I'm part of it. Whatever. Who cares? I'm part of a mystery school in VR. Okay.
Oh, you told me about this.
Yeah, I told you about it. And they have a whole Golden Dawn virtual ceremony room that I visited. I didn't do a ritual. I visited it. And the founder of the VR mystery school, he is self-initiated into the Golden Dawn. And they have the whole... Yeah. Almost, it looks like the tomb of Christian Rosenkreutz type of thing where they go in there. Dude, it's crazy. It's the craziest thing. So
cool. Yeah.
Yeah, people are using these virtual realities to augment their magical powers. Now, it's technomancy, right? So if you're able to do that in a virtual reality setting, then you're able to do it in an astral realm, right? From the comfort of your own home, and you're able to do whatever it is that you do in these magical settings to achieve whatever it is. So he told me about that book, and I forgot that I have it somewhere. It's a PDF. And I started reading it, but I never finished it.
Dude, so there's one section you got to read in it. It's on Tatwas. Do you know what Tatwa is?
No.
Tattwa. I think it comes from Hinduism. Pretty sure. Don't cite me on that. But the Golden Dawn uses them. A lot of the secret societies use them as methods of astral projection, of meditation, and basically they're colored symbols. So, it's like, I don't know, off the top of my head, a yellow triangle, a blue circle, red diamond, whatever. And you can choose one, and typically what you're choosing is, for a specific purpose or something, or element. And you meditate on it, either physically, like holding it up in front of you or something, or in your head, kind of like what you were saying with the phallus. It's a sort of tatwa. And the sections in that book that Israel Regardie describes with the tatwas are so crazy. Basically, he gives you exact instructions, and you hit on a lot of this stuff. He says that, let's say it's a yellow diamond or whatever, and you hold it, it's up in front of you, and if you meditate on long enough, you can basically enlarge it. So it's a small diamond, and then it's getting bigger and bigger in your mind until you go inside of it. You literally you climb into the diamond, and then you're in a astral world. And he said that you will encounter, like you said, what I believe he called it the guardian of the threshold, which is a tour guide, if you will, or a bodyguard is how you described it.
A psychopomp.
Something, they will basically greet you and say, hey, or, welcome. And he said that there can be false guides. And I know that can be a paranoia when doing that sort of stuff of being tricked. But he said that there absolutely can be false guides, and you have to know what you're doing. And in his case, he said you have to be able to give the sign of your grade. Or maybe it's a sign of your element. So, if I'm a Pisces, I would give the water sign, which is like that. And that if it didn't know the proper sign to give back, that it was sort of the only test you needed to do. And he goes on and on describing this world that you go into. And it just reminded me of what you were talking about. But the tatwas are crazy, man. Like when you look into them.
I think this is what you're talking about, because I went in here and I didn't know what it was. And he was talking about how every shade means a certain thing. Like every shade is, because it was weird. It looked off. And every shade it's meant to do something like that. And now that you're mentioning this, because I don't know what you're talking about. Like this is the first time I'm learning about it, but it's really fascinating because it goes back to why is the matrix code green? Well, there are some people who are able to quite literally see that. And not only that, but I think that light and the color spectrum, like the whole thing with Pink Floyd and the diamond, the pyramid and how it bends light.
Right.
Light is so important when it comes to our reality. And there's 7 chakras.
It is our reality.
Exactly. It is our perceivable reality.
Yeah.
And here I was in this temple that they use for Golden Dawn rituals, and it's all in VR, dude. I mean, it's a full replica. They have the chalice, they have the daggers, they have all this stuff. And I was literally Morpheus in this. I was Morpheus interviewing a frog. So I'm not kidding when I say
doing the Lord's work here.
Doing the Lord's work, because again, that's what we do here at the One Podcast. We get down in the trenches so you don't have to, and we show you these things. So and the thing is, dude, like a lot of people freak out because whatever, you're training the AI, who cares? But it's one thing to be aware of these things, and another thing to be ignorance is bliss, right? To be unaware of it. So people who are in this realm and they are ignorant to everything around the symbols. The symbols are the language of the soul, man. They speak to us.
Manipulated. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Or you, of course. So it goes both ways. Either you're being manipulated, or not that you're manipulating.
It's the force, bro. You use it for good or for evil.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
but at least that you're aware of it, and you can use it for good. Just like magic. Magic gets a bad rap, but of course it's mostly used for good. It's just maybe not that interesting when it's being used for good. It doesn't make for a good story or something. Scary story.
So I had never heard about this, but I think this is where I was. That's what that's used for. So it's mandalas in order to transport the soul, and I think that's what the platonic solids are, bro. There's this book that I have that
they look like Uno cards.
There's this book here. Check it out. I've been digging at this as of lately. Sacred Codes. I've had him on the podcast before, Lawrence Caruana, and it's the Forgotten Principles of Pain. He's a visionary artist, so he knows about transporting your mind to these places. And I think that's what they do real time nowadays with movies, video games. Like, dude, I was watching this movie the other day. I was almost crying, dude, because it was a fake movie, and it's like it's extracting real feelings out of me. Well, that's magic, bro. That's sympathetic magic. You're able to affect something from a distance. What's the whole thing with science? The spooky action at a distance. Well, that's magic, bro. I 100% am on board with the idea that they're using the same. It's a lost technology, 100%. And they're using the same tech that these ancients were able to use because there were back then most people were into magic. It was part of the culture. It was okay.
Yeah, and everyone was using effigies and doing rituals and so on. Like everything was sacred back then.
And if you think of what a dollar bill is, if not a sigil, it's a simulacrum of something much deeper. And what do they say? It's the root of all evil. Well, it corrupts people. We can talk about the whole crypto scandal or even the stock market and how money manipulates. It's people don't understand. What people have to understand is that when you're in any magical system, the number one thing is you have to believe. Well, what's propping up our money, our monetary system? Faith.
Right. The belief system.
Faith that tomorrow it's not going to collapse and it's going to continue going. Right. So the golden standard was thrown out the window. When was it? Was it
Nixon, I believe, in the 60s. Yeah.
Yeah, 60s or 70s, something like that. Point being that it's literally they can print as much as they want when they want. So where's the value in that? Where's the intrinsic value in that if you can just print more of it whenever you want? And that's it. You know what I'm saying? So
there's no intrinsic value. Of course the theory is that it's backed by the full faith and credit and strength of the United States government.
Oh, it's an IOU.
Yeah, it's an IOU. And that is its value, is just that it's a receipt from the most powerful organization in probably world history. So one of the things about the US dollar that's tricky is that it is a completely terrible currency and system, but it's also the least bad out of all the currencies and systems that are in existence right now, not excluding maybe like crypto and other things, because at least it's backed by the most powerful government, whereas the other ones, other countries are backed by like hilarious governments that have literally nothing. And then so it's complicated, because even when we have, because it's all relative, it's all exchange rates between currencies. So the dollar, its value is drawn from its exchange for goods or exchange for other currencies. And as long as the other currencies are doing worse, which they are, like inflation in the United Kingdom is much worse than inflation in the United States, then it's still a strong dollar. So it's very mind manipulating, because people will be like, oh, well, inflation's so bad. And of course it is. I mean, it's terrible. And it's done on purpose. But it's also not as bad as other countries right now. So we're in this weird state where it's like our system's terrible, but it's way better than the other ones, sort of deal, and I think that's what keeps it going, is that everyone else is still worse, and you can make the case that maybe some of the currencies like the ruble, where the country's sort of like nationalized and cut off global ties, it might be a bit stronger. But the United States dollar is still the standard, even though it's absolutely awful and they print it into oblivion. Everyone else is printing more and it's even worse. So it's really I don't know, between a rock and a hard place type situation.
But think about, because it's all about power, it's all about control. We're talking about the occult here. I 100% believe that they use these sigils. Did you know about something called, and I keep forgetting the name, but Exertus brought it up backstage while we were waiting to get set up for a podcast, and it was talking about in Cambodia or something, there is something called devil bucks or devil money, where it's this money that it has a bunch of sigils and stuff on it, and they burn it in hopes that these entities on these bills. So apparently it has a bunch of people who have gone to hell. It's really fucked up. And they burn this money and they say that they pray for these entities or these people to grant them wishes in this realm.
Wow. Yeah.
So I think that the alchemical monetary system, which I believe derived from the Knights Templar, and right. We know what the Knights Templar were up to. The modern day credit system, they were the ones that came up with that. Like, you deposit it here and you're able to extract it over there with some sort of card, some identification card. Yeah. And that carried on over until today. Well, if you think about, again, the exchange of energy, me paying you for something. Well, right now, the whole child sacrifice thing, I think, is in the future. We're sacrificing our future generations for us right now today, regardless of what happens to them. Well, that's we're sacrificing our children to this system. That's you could say that's our devil bucks or whatever it's called, Satan bucks, or I don't know. I forget what it's called.
We have our own devil bucks already, and it's through philanthropy. Because of course the most rich, most powerful people in the world are also the most philanthropic most of the time. And there's a bit of that where it's like, okay, they're trying to, polish up their public relations or whatever, their reputation. But I've heard it said that what they're doing is really a sacrifice. They're sacrificing their money. They're sacrificing what they value most. They value it more than a child, probably. It could be even more powerful than a child sacrifice, to where they're like, here's what I value most. Here's a lot of it, $10 million or something. And Bezos, in their case, is maybe $100 million. And I'm going to watch it burn. I'm going to, in sort of a twisted deal that they're going to get back more, where it's like, I'm giving up this now to get more later. And they sacrifice it to the charities where they know it's not being used for anything. If you think that people at that level of networking and know-how in business and how the world works actually think that their money is being used properly in these charities, you're crazy. They know that it's a sacrifice. They're burning it, watching it burn in front of them in a twisted devil bucks thing where, they're sort of, because I know some of the guru self-help books talk about this, where it's like, giving and giving and giving to people to get back more, and they say it sort of open up this void because the world will fill it type of thing. And I think that's probably what's going on with philanthropy. That's a twisted sort of sacrifice of what they value most.
I'm trying to find the name of the burning money. So I came across this article. In Cambodia, the ghosts prefer dollars.
Wow.
So
I know in Voodoo and Santeria they do that, where they'll leave out basically like a tip jar and they'll put dollars in it for the spirits.
Interesting. So fake money being burned. Many people, including the dearly departed, prefer to keep dollars, mindful of the local currency's volatility during.
There's a 50 in there.
Yeah, there's a 50 in there. Yeah. I think there's a 50 in there. So I'm trying to look for it because you're absolutely right. I think it's part of it's the black and white, right? It's the yin and yang. The good has to outweigh the evil that they do, and by them, because a lot of these people, they understand too that no matter how they can be as evil as they can be, and they still achieve some sort of divinity by transgression. Right, but it doesn't matter what you do, right? It's the whole "do what thou wilt" type of thing. Yeah. As of recently, we have the whole Balenciaga, the scandal and controversy on the internet. The conspiracies are going crazy about that, but we know it's like that this stuff is going on in the world, and people still choose to turn a blind eye towards it. But like how we mentioned at the beginning, is like, where does it stop? Is it ever going to stop? What are we able to do? Because people who speak out against it, we know what happens to them, right? I mean, I call it flying too close to the sun. There's been certain researchers that talk about you can't talk about certain things in the community, or else you get outed and you, again, stuff happens. So that's besides the point, but I'm saying that, you're absolutely right about these people giving up this offering. And
I think philanthropy is black magic. I think it really is. I think it's a sacrifice. I think that's what they value most. And they're sacrificing it to the altar of, fake goodwill, basically. They know that it's not getting anything done. They know they're not curing, some disease in Africa or something, or whatever it is that they're giving to. It's all BS. I mean, of course, it's a tax write-off too, but on top of that, I think it is a black magic strategy. I think.
Yeah, and I think that these people understand that, and that's the whole thing with the money, right? Why so much of it? We talked about Bezos at the beginning. You have Elon Musk, which I think is I like the way my friend puts it. He's a construct. I think these people understand how you're saying that they are in some sort of metaverse, and that's why they use all this money. It doesn't matter to them because it's a real life monopoly, and I think that the use of sympathetic magic is real, and I'm digging into the origins of chess, because speaking on the Enochian system, you know about Enochian chess?
Chess?
Enochian chess.
No, I mean I know about Enochian, but I don't know anything about Enochian chess.
Yeah, so there's this thing called Enochian chess, and it's a chess. I'm looking into it, but what I want to relate the concept of the game of chess as some sort of sympathetic tool for sympathetic magic, where you use it as a simulacrum of the real world, and you play a Game of Thrones in a way.
Wow.
And if you look at, they don't know the origins of chess. They don't know where it started. There's similar games all throughout history, but if you think about
similar with the tarot, with tarot cards, they don't know where that started. Most likely because it was just held within mystery schools and secret societies. Probably chess was too, alongside those. And they have no idea. It pops up in the Renaissance, and before that, no clue.
Well, and that's the thing. I think that royalty was using it in order to, right? You have the pawns. You have a hierarchy, a caste system within the actual game, and it's a game of. If you really look at it, it's like a game of ascension. It's almost like an occulted. What if? Because your brother and I have talked about it, where they use these buildings. And the wooden floors, if you follow the same steps as somebody who came before you, you're able to unlock something, right? Something happens. Well, what if by playing this game and you unlock a certain set of moves, you're able to
key in your brain or something.
Yeah, something happens.
The gears turn, yeah.
If you look at if you look at all the greatest players, right? They build these crazy mind palaces, and they're super. They remember all these crazy things. Well, it's like, again, I'm looking into also the origins of golf, and I've come across this idea. Trust me, bro. Whenever
I'm open minded. Don't worry.
Whenever I look at something and you start to connect the dots, it's like there's something occultic behind it. And I came across.
Look at Sorry, you can go first.
I came across this idea that the game of golf is actually a religion, like an ancient religion. And that the golf clubs were actually staffs, and they were playing golf hidden in plain sight, when they were actually doing like a sort of mass. Well, if you think about where they play golf nowadays, especially well, right there, dude. If you they're trampling, you know what I'm saying, they're using the same thing, where these ancient people did their ceremonies and their burial sites and stuff like that, and they're literally they're practicing a religion on top of that. If you look at it, it's what do they call it, the game of the wealthy or whatever, and it's super boring, but it's super big. Tiger Woods. Well, if you think about alchemical symbolism, you know what I'm saying, like the tiger, the lion.
Tiger,
I don't know, bro.
Trying to think if I can. Well, so I played lacrosse growing up. So did Dr. Longo. And lacrosse has really interesting origins. It originated it's a Native American sport. Mostly played in like upstate New York and Canada by those tribes, like the Iroquois and tribes like that. And they originally played, it was like a full-on, I think they played over like huge spaces of land. Like it wasn't like on a small field. It was played like over, like miles basically. And they would be passing around. They would have these sticks with baskets on them, and they'd be passing around a skull. It was a head that they were throwing around. Yes. And that's how they played. And that's the origin of lacrosse. They were playing with heads. There was no ball.
Of like their of whose head was it? Is it their enemy or?
Yeah, I don't know whose head they were using, but yeah, someone's head. It was probably someone who sacrificed, something like that.
Interesting. Or maybe they played in order not to get their head cut off and have their head used for the next games. Right?
Yeah.
That's interesting, because you think about, a lot of people don't understand again, it goes back to this idea of the occult, where people don't understand what they're practicing, literally, because when you go to practice for a sport, you're practicing the sport, to get better at it. Well, you don't know what you're participating in or its roots. They say that baseball is a Freemasonic game. If you look at how it's set up, it's got like, you know what I'm saying? Like the occult origins of everything that we do. You don't, people don't know. And I think that's part of the ritual too.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about the amount of energy, because I think it all goes back to energy and the mining of energy. If you think about the energy that's mined at these super bowls and these soccer cups or whatever they call them, you know, cups, the chalice and all these things, the amount of energy that goes into that, the money, transference of energy, alchemy, that goes into these places. Well, what if they are mining people's energies? And if you look at, I think it's another way to polarize people and put them in this two-party system, because if you don't argue about
tribal.
If you don't argue about politics, you're going to argue about which car brand is the best. And if you look at the car brand names, like a Horo Mazda, Mazda and the symbols, the Subaru symbolism, symbols rule everything. And I think that this is another tactic that they use to polarize us, to split us apart. Even and that's the whole thing about the truther community. As of lately, people have been pushing their ideologies on other people. It's like, the reason that we're here is because you had ideologies pushed on you.
Right.
And you didn't like that.
Yeah, the truther thing can get tricky because, you know, you also find a lot of people who are critical of history. Of course, they can be critical of other people, but they're critical of history, critical of the narratives that are spun. But it can go too far as well, to where it's like, okay, we were just shooting stuff down and you're not really putting anything else together, you know? So you have people who are saying, you know, oh, well, this is a lie, that's a lie, this is fake, that's fake. But they never tell you what their narrative is, you know, what they think the timeline is, or what you know what I mean? They're not really putting forth any idea, they're just criticizing. And that can get kind of old. I don't know if that's the truth necessarily. And you know, it's okay to go out on a limb and say, this is what I think. You don't have to say this is the truth, this is what happened. But I'd like to see more people in that community come out and give what they think happened, you know, whether it's the United States history or world history, instead of just sitting there and being like, oh, this building wasn't built when it was built. It's like, okay, well, what do you think? You know, when do you think it was built? You know, instead of just saying it wasn't built in 1850, be like, tell me when you think it was built. Tell me who you think built it.
Well, and they give you a very broad thing, like, oh, it's like history's a lie. Yeah, we know that, bro. I mean, it's like, what are you contributing to make it better? Like, what are you trying to get at? Like, what does it mean? And that's one of the biggest things is, right, you're surrounded by all these books, by all this knowledge. And if you were to read it all, would you even be able to comprehend it all? Probably not. But also, you have all this knowledge about the occult and all this stuff. It's like, what does it all mean?
Right. Yeah,
what are you doing with it?
Exactly. You have to be synthesizing. You have to be artistic. You have to be willing to stumble towards truth. So you're not going to be right away. Like I said, maybe in that example, when someone's criticizing, oh, the building wasn't built in 1850, and they just stop there. I'm saying, well, let's stumble our way towards what the truth really is. We're going to be wrong probably. And, you know, I'm going to go out on a limb and say, oh, I think it was built in 1250 by, you know, this tribe, you know, or something, whatever. And that makes you do a little bit more research. Because instead of tearing things down, you're actually synthesizing things. You're actually building yourself. And I think if all the truthers were doing as much synthesizing as they were criticizing, probably get a lot more done, get a lot closer to what the truth might be, you know. Instead of, like you're saying, it's like, all right, we get it. You know, there's a lot of lies, but what are the truths, you know?
Or what are you doing to combat that, or, you know, awake? Yeah. And that's the thing. It's not your job to wake anybody up, right? I personally, I just plant the seed. On this show, I talk about what I find interesting. I'm not here to push any agendas. I'm here to have open-minded conversations. And how you're saying, it's like, synthesize it. We are the OG Philosopher's Stone. We're intaking lead material and we're synthesizing and making gold. We're making art. We're producing podcasts. And I think as a podcaster, It goes back to the old alchemist in the cave. Well, the cave is these four walls, and the alchemy is my ideas, our ideas coming together, synthesizing other ideas in other people's minds as they're listening to this conversation, and they're connecting dots. You've helped me connect dots, like, damn, that was crazy, I didn't know about that, or whatever it is. And that's the beauty of it. That's alchemy. You're making, that's the gold. That art is the gold. And people, how you're saying, if they would focus on synthesizing instead of criticizing, the world would be a lot better. And I think we would actually make some ground and cover some ground, because it feels like sometimes, just honestly, sometimes we are in like an echo chamber too, right? A reality tunnel where you're stuck in that, and that's all you're focused on. And you can't really, there are no outside influences. It's just what you're seeing. And the truther community has gone kind of toxic as of lately, right? That's why. Well,
I'm not a member of the community. I don't naturally tend towards conspiracy theories, which is kind of interesting. I'm not like closed-minded or cynical. I think I might be too open-minded, actually.
Well, it's like, who was it?
I'm just kind of, I'm open to like all possibilities, and I'm not quick to have a conviction. I'm not quick to, because it's sort of paradoxical in this truther sphere. A lot of people are very open-minded. They're willing to hear things out or explore other potential truths, alternatives. But then once they find their thing, they're like ideological, which is what you talked about. They just shut off and they're like, no, this is it. And it's like, I think that I'm actually too open-minded to do some of that. You know, people will be like, oh, well, you know, what do you think? Is the earth flat or is the earth sphere? And I'm like, I don't know. It could be, you know, I'm open to both, or, you know, and people don't like to hear that. They just don't like the, I don't know. It's not an indecisiveness, because I do my research on all fronts, I think. But it's just, I don't like pretending that I know, you know, with some super strong conviction. And I like just remaining sort of open-minded and exploring all routes. And I think that our society is so binary. It's so, you know, you either believe or you don't. You can't just be like, I'm open to that possibility. So that can't be your answer. You have to, because then they'll be like, oh, so no.
Because they assume. But I forget who was it, either Aristotle or Socrates, that said it's the mark of an educated man to be able to entertain ideas without accepting them. And that's where I stand. I look at these topics as how Terence McKenna puts it. They're like toys with ideas and thoughts, and you just manipulate them and you put them right back. Well, because that's the thing. It's very easy. How you're saying, people will assume by us just talking about this that we automatically accept it, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, no, you're just trying to understand. You're open-minded, and I reserve the right to change my mind too, right? If I'm wrong about something, or if I learn something new, damn, you're right about that. Like, whatever. Like, you know, I'll vouch for that, or whatever it is. But yeah, dude, and it's, if you really think about it, dude, we're just ideas fighting with one another. Like, I don't like the way
it's the marketplace of ideas, you know.
Yeah,
that's all it is.
And if we are able to, I don't think we're ever going to come together, because there's just too many different ways people can interpret things. And that's the beautiful thing about life too, that you can interpret the same thing 5 different ways. So, and I think that's part of the alchemical process too, because there's different steps. There's 7 steps. And if you look at the 7, I mean, that's the whole thing with existence, with any major religion, how we mentioned earlier, like the colors, sounds, the musical notes, all these different things. Well, there's steps to it. So maybe we won't get to the same idea today, but who knows if we're maybe kind of get to this close ground.
Yeah, that's why I said stumbling towards truth. That's just the phrase I like the best. Stumbling towards, you know, we're going to be so wrong along the way. You know, we're putting ourselves out there, taking a risk, you know, by taking some sort of position, and by having different positions, like you're saying, of sort of being divided. But eventually we get slowly towards the truth. And I don't know if you know Maimonides. He was a Jewish philosopher.
No, never heard of him.
His whole thing was that he said since creation is vast and complex, and God's will is beyond human understanding, and he sort of defined God as all human perspectives put together, like a full circle. Like if you lined up every human in a huge circle and just had all of their points of view combined into one thing, that would be God in his definition. And so he thought that the goal of biblical interpretation should be to maximize the possible interpretations, which is very different than most scholars. Maimonides was a really interesting guy. He's been influential since, but he thought basically that we should look at, in his case, the Torah, but it could be the Bible or any book or anything in life, and try to maximize the different perspectives, different understandings of whatever it is that we're studying, and that was getting closer to God, closer to truth, because God is that sort of a omniscient circle.
So it's like the whole idea that God is experiencing himself through everybody type of thing?
Yes. Yeah, that's what he thought. So because he's doing that, we should try to experience the world through everybody too. Try and understand everybody's point of view. Yeah,
that's what I tell people. I mean, the at its core, I think that's what religion does. It sort of helps people synthesize. It gives them a structure, but then goes back to what we talked about at the beginning of what's the saying? Absolute power corrupts absolutely, or something around that. Yeah. You start to have that greed in the organization, and people start to push certain ideologies. And now, how many denominations is it of Christianity nowadays? Like 100,000 or some?
Oh my God!
Like 30-something thousand, whatever. Yeah. A crazy number, because again, they can't even agree on one thing because they're interpreting this ancient scripture 100,000 different ways. So like that one detail that changes from this sect to the next, well, they this denomination to the next, and they just change, and they started their whole new denomination. And these people over here are getting bit by snakes, and these other people are like, no, you can't take that literal because the snakes are dangerous. You know what I'm saying? Like it's crazy, bro.
Yeah,
it's wild,
dude. The theological breaks and schisms that used to happen in like the Middle Ages are hilarious.
Yeah.
Like the arguments that they were having over different sects or between different scholars and scholasticism are so funny because of how silly they are. It's like, oh, what do you think the structure of the Trinity really is? What do you think that? And it's like, who cares? Like it's just so silly to be arguing over those silly different things.
They were arguing about which type of bread to use for the Eucharist.
Yeah, right.
And if when you ate the bread, if it would become shit in your body after the fact, or would it not? Because it's the body of Christ. Bro, there's so many things, and
that one's actually kind of funny.
Exactly. But just to think, just so people understand how far it's come and how ridiculous man can be, man himself can be. And just the imperfections of man. And I don't think that it's really easy, bro, to get lost in the sauce and be like, hey, and you've seen this tactic used all throughout history, and you understand history, you know your history. But the idea, and we can talk about the Byzantine Empire, because the idea of using divine rulership to rule over a people, it's a brokered experience, dude. I don't think that any one man can say, hey, I'm trying to word it in the correct way, but I don't think that man himself can claim to have talked to divinity in some sort of way. And the reason I'm saying that is because I've come from a Pentecostal background where every other day somebody, heard the voice of God or whatever. It was like, but did you really, bro? You know what I'm saying?
Probably not.
Like,
Probably not.
I came from where they would dance around, jump around, speak in tongues and all these things. Like, I don't feel that man, because he's so imperfect, should be saying that. And if you look at like the Holy Roman Empire, when they're like, hey, well, I'm the king, I'm the emperor, I'm ruling over you. Well, there's one thing to be like, hey, God appointed me in this throne to rule over you. That rang a different bell with people, and that rubbed them a different way. You know, and I don't think that should be the case. I think it should be like I don't know what the solution is. I'm not even going to try and offer a solution.
I do like I think the solution is individualism. You touched on earlier, the hero's journey, the individual becoming his own hero, his or her own hero, and facing life more or less on their own, like an existential, heroic fashion. That's probably one of the solutions. But one of the best quotes I've heard on Christianity was, God, what's the guy's name? Like, I think it's Athanasius said, "God became man so that man could become God." Yeah, I love that quote.
Oof.
Yeah, and it just sort of made that Christian story of why God would become, a living being, walking person. It made it make sense to me. I'm in no way like a subscribed Christian or something, but it made me more interested in it from sort of a mystical perspective. Not that man would become a God, but sort of become united with God.
Yeah.
Once again, and to prove that it is this sort of full circle, that he can become man so that you could become him, or in union with him. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and I like the way that they put it in the Gnostic cosmology, where in the upper eons, it's the watery light. And in the watery light, the angels see themselves within you, and you see the angels within you. So it's like how you're saying that oneness. It's like we're all one. And I think that's why they were wiped out, bro. The Gnostics. I think that's why they were killed, because you can't 100%. Be talking about that. Yes.
Gnostics. Yeah.
You can't be talking about that.
Yeah. They were way closer to some sort of true religion, system of mysticism, of independence, of alchemy and magic, all encompassing religion of truth. And the Gnosticism has some weird stuff that's hard to get my head around, but it has a lot of truth too. So they were sort of stumbling as well. They were onto some. They were into astrology. They were into all kinds of interesting practices. Have you ever heard of hesychasm?
No. How do you spell
it? HESY chasm, CHASM. So this is interesting. Everyone's familiar. It's so interesting how Christianity has a split between like the Roman Catholic Church, which eventually splits off into Protestantism, and then Eastern Orthodoxy, which is, you find in North Africa, the Middle East, Turkey, Russia, Greece. Of course, that happens with the Great Schism. But hesychasm is a Eastern Orthodox school of mysticism. So it's like a monastic Christianity. It takes aspects from Kabbalah, from Sufism, from Gnosticism. It shares a lot with Gnosticism, and it's still going today. Their central text is the Philokalia. It's in English, it's a 4-book set. We have it in the store. Really, really interesting. Nobody in the West talks about hesychasm. You'll hear about Gnosticism all the time, all these other things. Nobody talks about hesychasm, and it makes you wonder why. Most people don't talk about Eastern Orthodox religion at all. Which again, what's going on with that? If you talk to most Christians and ask them some questions about Orthodoxy, they don't even know, some of them, that it exists. But then, let alone that it's thriving, that their practitioners are still going today. In Russia, it's of course the biggest religion, and Greece and other areas, and it's much more mystical, Eastern Orthodoxy. So they have hesychasm, which is like their very mystical sect, almost like Sufism is in Islam. But their version of Christianity as a whole is much more mystical. It has, there's less reliance on the church, more emphasis on direct experience of God or working towards union with God, on meditation, mantras. It's very interesting, worth looking into, I would say. They have no tradition of scholasticism.
I've never heard. This is the first time I'm hearing about this. So it's a sort of. So I'm seeing the practices here. So it's a sort of internal. So you have an alchemical process, so purification.
Yep.
You have illumination. You have deification, and so through prayer, through meditation, it's almost like a sort of kundalini type of thing where you're trying to achieve the soul ascent, right? The connection and taking yourself to God strictly through prayer. There's no church involved, which is, and that's what they don't want though, bro, because
and there's very little. What I was touching on is there's no scholasticism, so there's no tradition of philosophy of religion. So in the Roman Catholic Church, you have St. Thomas Aquinas, St. Augustine, all these people who are monks who would sit there all day long for their whole life and ruminate on God and on theology. And we touched on earlier, but get in these like little philosophical debates on the details.
Get lost in the sauce,
and scripture, and they're just talking about dogma with no emphasis on the things that you just touched on, illumination and these processes. Eastern Orthodox Christianity has no scholasticism. There are no arguments going on about little details, and it's not perfect or something. It's just worth looking into because almost nobody talks about Eastern Orthodox Christianity, and it's huge. Most people in Russia are Eastern Orthodox Christians, and Greece too, and in Turkey for a long time. So it's not like some little thing.
Because I think that, so what you're saying, it goes back to what I mentioned, and I've seen this even firsthand when the translation of certain grimoires were occurring, people of the church were translating a lot of these grimoires, and they would omit on purpose parts of these grimoires because it wouldn't align with their views of the time. Well, that doesn't stop at grimoires. That will be the case for any ancient scripture that you look at. Well, how do you know it hasn't been filtered down? I mean, the King James version of the Bible, if you look at the history of King James, dude, come on.
And all the councils, the council of this, the council of that.
So I like that idea of just take their, God is God. If it's a male, female, if he's black, white, who cares? It doesn't matter what bread you use. But at the end of the day, bro, they want a brokered experience. They want to have that control. They want to they want to be the middleman. And that's why I'm saying I don't think a man has the credentials to tell you if you've been saved or not. You know what I'm saying? Like it's up to, it's your gnosis. It's whatever it is to you, that sacred knowledge to you, and your process of catharsis or whatever it is, of illumination, et cetera, that's on you and the deity or the divine or whatever it is. I don't think that anybody should be between that, and I think that's why, again, people start to, it's like the force. It's
that's why sects like Eastern Orthodoxy, hesychasm, Gnosticism get censored. They get ignored. Nobody talks about them in the West. It's all, go to your church, submit to the Pope, all that kind of stuff. They don't want to hear the words gnosis, illumination, catharsis, and so on. And there's just so much interesting history with the Christian church. Have you ever heard the Ethiopian stuff? Not like the Ark of the Covenant.
Well, that's where the Book of Enoch comes into play.
Yeah.
But
way before that, when this is the Middle Ages, so the Arabs, and more or less recently, powerful Muslim caliphates had taken over the whole Middle East, most of North Africa, as well as parts of Eastern Europe and Southern Europe of the Mediterranean, and there became this. It's really interesting. There became this huge split between Europe and Africa, and in Europe, they thought they were the only people in the world who practiced Christianity. And they would hear stories of this land beyond the Arab universe, beyond the Arab world, where people are also practicing Christianity. And it was mythical. They were like, oh, yeah, yeah, right. And they said they're black. They're black people. They're huge. And they're Christians. And, like one person, like every 50 years would come back from Africa and be like, it's true. Like there are, and it was like a folklore type thing. It was like, yeah, oh my God. Like they're
and like by huge, is
like,
it like giants or what are you getting
no,
about?
just like,
like a great number of people.
No, I just mean like the Ethiopians were super tall. And they're just like, very tall black people, which in Europe at that time was like, they'd never seen a black person in their life. And they practice the same religion as us.
Interesting.
And people would be like falling out of their chairs. Like, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard in my life. And there's really interesting books on this because you literally have Christianity on two ends growing in its own little universe. So it's interesting to see the differences that happen. And when they came into contact with each other, it was fascinating to read about. Europeans and Ethiopians coming into contact, both of them Christians. Imagine, it'd be like an alien dropping down from the sky and being like, oh yeah, Pentecostals, like, yeah, we're in on it too,
Mm-hmm.
Your head would explode. Like, how did, of course it's pretty straightforward, the history, but it's interesting to read about.
So what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it's like a universal type of thing, a universal force that's and everything? It just depends on how you tap into it, because if they weren't indoctrinated by the mainstream.
Not by the mainstream. Yeah, the Ethiopians had their own version of like Coptic Christianity.
Okay.
So it's like an Egyptian, Ethiopian, African form. Yeah, of course it originated.
And it's one of the oldest too.
It's one of the oldest. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It is super interesting.
And that's one of the things that got me into this whole thing when I was asking those hard questions at church or wherever. And I wasn't being given answers. My questions were like, why are you referencing a non-canonical book in our canon, but you're referencing it, you're referencing a non-canonical book in our canon. And then when I ask you why it's non-canon, it's because it's heretical, but yet you're referencing it. So that type of thing. And I'm talking about the Book of Enoch. And when you read that book, how it's in one of the oldest Bibles of all time, but it's not in the King James. It's like, well, because is it too woo woo? Is it too?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
absolutely, yeah.
Because it goes hard in the paint, bro.
Yeah, and there's some interesting stuff with the Book of Enoch and what's the other one? Oh, the Pistis Sophia.
Mm-hmm.
It's the Gnostic text. So the Pistis Sophia was in what language is it written in? It's in Coptic Egyptian. So the Pistis Sophia is written in an ancient dead language called Coptic, which is basically Egyptian using the Greek alphabet. Because, of course, the Greeks ruled over Egypt for periods of time.
Mm-hmm.
And it's written from way back. It's a Gnostic text. And it was found in the 1700s, I believe, early 1700s. Same thing as the Book of Enoch, around the same time.
It's like a story of creation, but it's like behind the scenes type of thing where it's like it gives you the nitty gritty. It's like, you know what I'm saying? Like that. And that's what they don't want you. Because like one of my favorite apocryphal or either Nag Hammadi or Dead Sea Scrolls, whichever ones. Because imagine how different, like that's the underground Christianity. Imagine how different.
Untouched.
Yes, unfiltered, because it wasn't filtered through the Romans. Yeah. And I like to think of it like sometimes like, what if they were writing like some sort of fan fiction or something, and they just wanted to
Yes.
keep it for themselves, and then they stashed it away somewhere, and some people found it. Do you believe that story, bro? How they found it? Like some people found it, they were burning it to like kindle their fire, and then
I've heard about that. All the stories with the Dead Sea Scrolls and the other one, Nag Hammadi, and all those are hilarious.
Because it was the same year, I think either Crowley or Parsons was doing some funny stuff, and they were found. I think it was. I forgot what.
Really?
Yeah. It was like near something occultic was happening. Like the Nag Hammadi
Wow.
was being discovered. Then the Dead Sea Scrolls came later.
Yeah.
But it had
the book of Enoch and the Pistis Sophia were found within, I don't know, maybe 10, 15 years of each other, something like that. Yeah, both in the early 1700s. The weirdest part about those is they're both in dead languages. So you said it, but the Book of Enoch is in Ethiopian. It's in ancient Ethiopian, which nobody speaks, and definitely nobody can translate into English, or at the time it was found. And same thing with the Pistis Sophia. Nobody could translate Coptic into English because it's dead. Some people may have understood it, but they definitely couldn't translate. And it was decades before they could translate them in the 1800s. But this is where it's interesting, is that the secret societies like the Masons, Rosicrucians, and so on, their societies started showing signs in their rites and rituals and practices and symbols that they understood what was in those texts. So the texts were found and they were put on display in England in museums, both of them, Book of Enoch and Pistis Sophia. And then before they're translated, in the secret societies, we see, this is 1700s, so think, George Washington, Freemasons in America, how Egyptian they were. And they started taking on aspects of things that were in these texts when the text hadn't been translated. So it raises the question, how were, is it some just synchronistic thing where, they started doing things that were totally mirroring later what we know the texts say when we translated them afterwards in the 1800s? Or were they able to translate them? They had preserved knowledge. Or, that's probably the only other option. Either it's synchronistic, there's some sort of unconscious type thing that they're tapping into, or they really do have a lineage that goes back to these cultures in Egypt, and maybe even further back to where they were able to they could go to the museum and look at the Pistis Sophia and be like, oh, I know, we have that knowledge preserved. We can translate it before the public could translate it.
Yeah. So what do you think is going on there? Because it makes me think of, what's the book that John Dee allegedly had that nobody was able to decipher?
The Voynich manuscript.
The Voynich manuscript, where so the reason I bring that one up is because.
Have you heard the story of how that was found?
No.
Oh my God, dude. It's, I haven't been able to find the primary text on this.
Because I know it had to do with like Rudolph II, but the thing about that text was that
we both love Rudolph. We both love that period of time.
Oh yeah. So
Prague,
the idea of this text invoking a change within people when they read it, almost like if the pages are made out of some sort of poison or something. Well, it's making me think of, because you're talking about these texts having some sort of metaphysical effect, like in some which way, like where they're affecting reality. Yes. And so what do you think is going on there? Do you think it's like something that's tapping into like the Akashic records and their DNA?
Right. It could be something like that, where it is, I'm a Jungian. So I use the term collective unconscious, but Akashic records, same exact thing. And it could be some sort of symbol that, like you said earlier, when you
unlocks
see
something,
a symbol unlocks, it just turns the gears.
What the fuck?
All of a sudden the Masons are just like, oh yeah, like obelisks and Egyptian stuff and all. And, we understand they're doing rituals that are in, the Book of Enoch, or, things that are in the Book of Enoch before we could even translate them.
Yeah.
So either it's that, or they really have a lineage
Mm-hmm.
which goes back far enough,
Mm-hmm.
which they say they do. So,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard.
Yeah, because
Either way, it's interesting.
Like Egyptian rite or something like that. Then there's the Scottish rite. Then there's the other rite. Like there's a whole bunch of different sects. Again, back to the whole thing. People can't even agree. But yeah, and then these people said they have the legitimate lineage to that group of people, but then the other ones say like, no, they was broken off a long time ago, and they have wizard wars and so. But I never thought about that before. But it goes back to this idea that where does the word grammar come from? It comes from grimoire. So the idea that spelling and words and these sigils have an effect, especially which type of ink are you using to write these words down? It's almost like the manga Death Note, where he writes down the names of these people and they die in real life. So again, some sort of sympathetic magic, but then it would make you think like, who were the writers of it? Was it the OG Enoch? Probably not. You know what I'm saying? Like these dudes were 100% magicians and they were involved in magic, even though like, I forgot who it was. I think it was Michael Scott. I don't know if you've ever looked into the Michael Scott, the magician Michael Scott, the theologian Michael Scott, where he was like a church father. He was a theologian. And they were like, hey, wait a minute, bro. You are writing about occult practices. You are reading about occult practices. You know this way too well for a guy who says that's heretical and is against it and is for the church. Yeah. Well, the conspiracy is that he turned out that he was actually one of the greatest occultists of all time, practicing necromancy and what they call nigromancy, which is black magic. So again, it's
the John Smith from the Mormons.
Mm-hmm.
He was a necromancer.
Really?
100%. Oh yeah, it's in the Book of Mormon.
Yeah, it's like that's like a funny religion that's like, I can only interpret these skulls. And then there was like a ring, I think it was.
Oh, there's all kinds. But in his story of how he found the tablets, which are the Book of Mormon, he basically comes into contact with this angel, Moroni. And the angel tells him his brother had died and buried, all that. And the angel tells him, this is in the Book of Mormon. The angel says, bring me your brother. And he says to the angel Moroni, he's like, yeah, but my brother's dead. Like, I can't bring you my brother. And he says, bring me your brother. And he's like, okay.
So he exhumes him?
It ends there. It ends there. They don't explain it. But John Smith's father believes that he dug his brother up and basically brought him to this tree where, it's pretty trippy. I think there might be evidence that he dug him up too, but it's full on like.
I did not know that. I don't know the history on. I know it's a cult, but
he was an occultist. So
like a cult, like CULT.
Yeah.
Not only
he was literally an occultist.
Yeah.
He was using he was scrying. He was using sigils. He wore like a Jupiter talisman, he was an occultist through. So it's not that surprising.
Yeah, I read about that, about him doing scrying sessions and trying to contact other entities, which I think
Voynich manuscript. I almost forgot to tell you.
So let's wrap it up on that, because I think we should get together again and talk about the Byzantine Empire. And you really piqued my interest when it came to these books that affect reality, because I think that's what all these movies in Hollywood are about, like the Ninth Gate, like the book written by Satan himself and all these crazy things. Well, to think that this would happen, but it goes back to how you're saying this Jungian concept of these symbols unlocking, being these keys to our psyche of humanity.
Yeah.
So what were you saying about the Voynich?
The Voynich manuscript, first of all, is in a language which cannot be deciphered. So nobody can translate it or understands what language it's in. It is, to my knowledge, believed to be, by whatever their definition is, a real language. So there is like syntax and things in the spelling. And it was discovered by Edward Kelly. It wasn't discovered by John Dee. He obviously was in possession of it, but Edward Kelly found it I believe in England, Scotland, wherever he was living in the United Kingdom.
I think this is in his biography, right? John Dee's biography. I think I read it, but they sold it for like 15,000 gold or something like that. Yeah.
But Edward Kelly says that he was led to the Voynich manuscript by a magical creature. Yes. He says he was led to it by a magical creature. I've been dying to find out what the primary, where he said that. Because I've only heard that from secondary sources.
That Vincent Bridges said that?
No, I don't remember where I was reading it.
Because Vincent Bridges is like the top esotericist for Edward Kelly.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if you've ever read his work.
No, I haven't.
It's fucking mind
got to then.
Dude, Vincent Bridges, look him up. One of my favorite esotericists, occultists, whatever. He is mind blowing, bro. Read his work and you will be blown away. I'll send you some of his stuff.
Yeah, I just looked him up.
Yeah, he's passed away now, but rest in peace.
He says he was led to it by a magical creature.
A homunculus?
Whatever that means. It could be a homunculus. I don't know. I didn't say it. Could be any, little gnome or Bigfoot or something. I don't know what the hell it is. I want to know. I really do.
Well, where'd you hear this?
I can't remember. I was listening to something on Prague and Rudolph II and that whole thing, and he was talking about John Dee and Edward Kelly, and it said that that's how he discovered it.
Because Rudolph had midgets. Like he had a collection of midgets.
Yeah. Rudolph we could do a whole podcast. I'm obsessed with that point in time, the Rudolphian Prague, and everything that was going on. And they, of course, housed the Voynich manuscript in Rudolph's Cabinet of Curiosities.
Interesting, because Guillermo del Toro just came up with a cabinet.
Yeah.
Is that based off of that?
The word originally is Wunderkammer, which is Cabinet of Curiosities, Cabinet of Wonders. And basically Rudolph had entire buildings full of things, stones, magical objects,
save it.
Clocks and
let's do an episode just on that next. I want to touch on that because I think that plays a key role into, and we can when we're talking about that, we can talk about the Byzantine Empire because that ties all into that whole thing.
Yeah, we'll do that one too.
And how maybe they're magically affecting reality today. Who knows?
Absolutely.
Right? So,
the Voynich manuscript, you know where it is right now?
Where
it's housed?
They're like Washington D.C. or something.
Yeah, Yale University.
Oh yeah.
Yes. Skull and Bones, baby.
Oh damn, dude! Hold on, let me hit the button.
Yeah.
Illuminati confirmed.
There you go.
You can look it up, dude. The Voynich manuscript is in the Yale University Library.
Yikes!
Yeah, isn't that crazy? It came all the way from Rudolf Sprague and Edward Kelly and all of them.
That is crazy. Occultists run the world, and I think. Yeah, let's wrap it up there, dude. We'll do it definitely. Sure. We'll do, and I'll invite my friend who also fascinated by Rudolph II, and I did buy that book from your store, Rudolph II.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
So, yeah, dude, let's get together again. I really enjoyed this. I think we touched on a lot of things. A lot of new ideas were brought forth, and we'll dig into Edward Kelly. I'm going to be doing an episode on John Dee, so I think I know enough about Edward Kelly to be dangerous, but I'll do some more digging to see because again, he was one of the greatest alchemists of all time, and one of the purposes of a homunculus is to find buried treasures. And it could have.
John Smith was a treasure seeker too, the founder of Mormonism.
There you go.
That was his actual profession.
Interesting. And these are guys who are breaking taboos too. So we'll get into that, dude. Can you want? I don't know if you want to plug your social media or not. If you want, I can plug. You can plug. You don't have to plug if you don't want to, and then I can.
Yeah, I don't have anything that interesting.
Cool. Yeah. No, we'll talk again soon, Professor Longo. I really enjoyed this, and I think you did great for your third podcast now, bro.
I think it is. Yeah, I think it's my third one.
Awesome, dude.
Big time now.
Yeah, you're a big podcaster, bro. Big pimpin'. Dude, thank you for coming on, bro. I really appreciate you. Yeah. And I had a lot of fun. We'll do it again very soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
For sure, bro.